Hi. Welcome. It is good to have everybody. It's good to see you. Here's what we're going to do today. We are going to open up in prayer, and then I want to walk through kind of just some what a debate judge does, kind of what you can expect in a round, kind of how that goes. I'm going to give you a quick overview of some terminology on some things, so you'll kind of know what you're going to hear a little bit of. Your kids or the people that have roped you into this gig might have thrown you some information on there. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense until you get past that first round or two, but we're gonna go out there so you are armed with some things ready to go ahead of time. Uh, Good. So we're going to do is we're going to open up in prayer, and this is a prayer that I use every day in class with the debaters. It's a prayer of Saint Columba of Iona. If you came to back to school night or to the pre-season parent meeting, then you got a chance to pray this with it. It's the prayer we pray every day. Saint Columba of Iona is the patron of our program. He is one of the patron saints of poets. Medieval Irish monk, encouraged greater copies and use of the Psalms and of Scripture, and is a person that cared very deeply about words and the power of words to change the heart, to change the soul, and to change the world that we live in. So he's a very worthy patron for our team, and we're going to begin. So we'll begin in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Lord, grant us that love which can never die, which will enkindle our lamps but not extinguish them, so that they may shine in us and bring light to others. Most dear Savior, enkindle our lamps, that they may shine forever in your temple. May we receive unquenchable light from you, so that our darkness will be illuminated and the darkness of the world will be made less. Amen. In the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I gave a packet in the letter that I sent out a couple emails on it. You might have gotten a reminder email today that had a packet of six or so page packet. It's about like it's our judging packet. I'll if you have it, we're gonna more or less kind of go in order through it. I will have printed copies of this at the table on Saturday, so you don't need to print something. You're welcome to. I don't care. But bring it in, and so you'll have it. But I just kind of that's what we're gonna do. So first thing I want to do is begin with a big thank you. Thank you for volunteering to be a judge at our tournament. Now I say volunteer. Some people, their kids voluntold them. But we're going to say volunteering, and thank you for that. We appreciate it. Academic debate began in the United States somewhere now in the years just before the Civil War, and has been part of the way that Americans like to make decisions and pursue truth. And the modern version of debating emerged about 100 years ago. Actually, the National Speech and Debate Association celebrates its 100th birthday during this academic year. So here you are taking your place among the greats in a long line of debaters who pursue truth, and thank you for it. You really do make this game possible. I talk to coaches from other parts of the country, and we talk about so Kansas has a really healthy debate culture. It thrives here. We are maybe I say all the time, and people don't believe me until they see some glimpses of the big world of debate. We're the best policy debate state in America. We have a very healthy culture of it. And part of the reason that it's a healthy culture is because of the families that support debaters. And honestly, I think it's a lot of like people who will judge at tournaments without a lot of debate experience. I actually think that preserves the game because in a lot of parts of the country where debate persists, it is debate geeks talking to debate coach geeks, and like this gets this weird jargony syncretic thing that turns into a mess. So actually, if you have a ton of debate experience, that's awesome. Welcome back to the game. If you have no debate experience, thank you for keeping our game pure. It is one of the things that keeps the game healthy in Kansas, and I love it. I really do. Thank you so much for that. Uh, and I also want to say at the beginning, a lot of people are super nervous about debating or about judging for it. They're like, we talk about this with our debaters in class. Like a lot of times, new debaters that or new judges are like, oh no, I'm going to mess something up. I'm going to ruin a tournament. I'm going to keep a kid out of Yale. Like whatever it is. And I'm going to say like from the beginning, relax. You're probably going to do fine. You're like, what is a good debate judge? A good debate judge is somebody that wants to see kids do something really hard and be fair about a decision for it. Like that's what a good debate judge is. It's somebody that will go and share the struggle, but also just like make a decision based on what you heard. Bad debate judges make decisions based on their own opinion, not what actually happens in the round, or they say like, "Well, I'm just not going to vote for ugly kids today." We don't usually see that, but like that's a bad debate judge. But good debate judges are willing to be fair and adjudicate the round that they're seeing on there. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it quite a bit. So you don't need to be an expert on the subject. A great topic this year, talking about intellectual property and copyrights and patents and trademarks, and it's actually super interesting. It's so far been actually way more interesting than I expected out of it. So that's been great. But you don't need to be an expert if you don't know anything about intellectual property. It's okay. And if you don't know anything about debate, welcome. But well, thanks for joining us. Debaters learn to recognize judges and adapt to all kinds of judges from, like I said, the debate geeks that have been doing it for 40 years and the people that are just sitting down the first time because their daughter does debate and makes you be a judge. You learn to recognize and adapt to all kinds of judges and speak to the audience they have. I'll also say that our tournament this year, most tournaments in the last few years have been very novice heavy. Ours is no exception on it. We have about a 4-to-1 enrollment this year on at our tournament of novices to advanced debaters, which is not unusual. It's a little exaggerated to have so many novices at it, but that means that most of our tournament is made up of novices who are learning the activity right alongside you. So that's awesome. I hope that brings consolation if you've got a nervous heart on this one. Um, we'll also, so let me talk for a second about that resolution. The resolution is the topic for debate, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on this one, but I just want to like throw this out so you know what we're talking about. We are talking about intellectual property today. The topic for the whole debate season uses one sentence as the topic, and all of the ways that this sentence can be adapted to different ways. So this year, you'll hear debaters say something to the effect of, resolved, the United States federal government should significantly strengthen its protection of domestic intellectual property rights in copyrights, patents, and or trademarks. So it's what we're seeing there that this is we're asking the federal government to do something to strengthen intellectual property. It is a little bit of a pick and choose: copyrights, patents, and or trademarks. I have not seen an case at all this year. We're going to do copyrights and patents. Usually, kind of the predominant way is that some debate team will pick one of the three of these that they want to focus on. And you'll find that all of these words could be interpreted in a wide variety of things. You see, what does it mean to strengthen? What does it mean to have domestic intellectual property? What does it mean to protect? What does it mean to have the federal government do it versus other bodies do it? So it's actually a pretty broad field of debate. And like I said, it's been a lot of fun to see this year. Okay, so what makes a good debate judge? I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I want to go back to it. A good debate judge is fair-minded, somebody that's going to come to it. Now, listen, I have opinions on intellectual property. I am a creator myself. Digital creator on YouTube. I mentioned before, like my wife and I own a t-shirt company. She's a graphic designer. I'm in my basement right now, which you can't see right off camera, as our sweatshop of where we make all of our t-shirts and stuff. But being married to a person whose job is graphic design and creativity, and then I consider myself intellectual property matters a lot to me, and I have opinions on it. But I'll also say that when I go in to go judge around, I set all of those opinions aside and I say, what is the debate that I'm actually seeing here? What's the one that is actually playing out among the four kids in the room, not the one that I want to have in my head, right? So your feelings about the topic actually aren't in play. I mean, sorry. Maybe you have some expertise in this subject, and that's great. I hope the debate comes around to your expertise, but what you're really looking for is the round that you're seeing on there. The debaters are there to reach you. It is their job to communicate to you. I suggest you take a lot of notes. Some of the rounds might get a little zippy. That's me trying to snap. It's hard. Okay. Debate is a timed game. So like you say, well, a soccer player has an advantage if they can run fast. Well, the debater has an advantage if they can speak fast. That said, we hope debaters size you up and say, okay, this is a person that can listen quickly or not. But I would suggest you be prepared to take some notes as best as you can. What should you bring on Saturday? Some paper, some scratch paper, a pen that you like. We'll have some pens there also. Bring a bottle of water. I slug a cup of coffee. We'll also have some coffee going in our hospitality lounge. I don't have this on the list, but I would say if you have a laptop, you will love having a laptop there because debaters will share their evidence and their speeches, and they will actually just like put it up on the board that everybody can come and grab a code that they use to share all of their Word documents or something like that. If you have a laptop, bring it. An iPad would work onto it. Um, you know, iPads are always a little clunkier, but look, but if you got one of those, bring them. You will appreciate it. It's certainly not a required thing. I've seen judges try to use their phones. That's really hard. But when I learned back in my day, our we had computers, we had the internet. It was still screwed to the wall, and so like we didn't have, and you don't need it. And if some people just say, you know what, debate's a talking activity, come talk to me, and they don't bring any device, that's totally acceptable as well. But I know when I go into a round, I bring a laptop with me because I they read a lot of evidence, and it's nice to be able to just kind of read along with people. But yeah, bring a disposition that you want to go see kids do hard things, and a piece of paper and a pen. Okay. So okay. How do people debate? This is going to be a very like a two-slide presentation on what goes on in a debate round. A debate team is made up of two high schoolers. Um, and they are from the same school. So a team, they don't blend people from different schools. So there will be two kids from Blue Valley Directional, whatever, right? And they're gonna face off against two other kids from Olathe Directional, right? And we don't have any St. James debaters competing. When you host, you don't compete because all of the judges of everybody's mom, right? So what they do, they'll come into the room, they'll move the desks probably close to each other, so they can kind of talk to each other, and then they will take turns each side affirming or negating the resolution. So that resolution on domestic intellectual property rights. Somebody is going to affirm that sentence. Yes, the United States federal government should significantly strengthen its protection. And somebody will negate. The United States federal government should not. And whatever. There's a lot of ways that somebody might negate the resolution. Um, and yeah, there's a couple of different kinds of speeches. There's a constructive speech where they're building their arguments up. There are cross-examinations, which technically are not speeches, but you can think of them as speeches. Cross-examinations where one debater will ask another person questions at the end of their speech. So like somebody will go up and give their first affirmative constructive, and one of the other kids from the debate team will go up and stand next to them and say, okay, I have some questions for you. They have a 3-minute period where they ask questions on it. And then after everybody gets a constructive and everybody gives and answers across examination, they go in the last speeches around called the rebuttals, and I'll go through all this in a little bit more in depth as we come. And then they rotate positions. The next round, the kids that were affirmative one round are probably going to be negative the next. We try to see that at every tournament, the kid gets to be negative a couple of times and affirmative a couple of times, and the result is by the end of the tournament, they have discussed multiple sides of a complicated issue. When it goes well, that's the way it goes. Okay, so here's what I need you to do on Saturday. I need you to check in before your round begins. We have 5 rounds. They're scheduled at more or less hour 45s. There's a little bit longer over the lunch break, but otherwise they're more or less at hour 45 intervals. And 15 minutes before the round starts, come see the kids at the judges table. Judges table will be right in the front doors of St. James Academy. So like right around the Circle Drive, you'll come in there. There'll be some smiling kids sitting at a table by the front door. If you are there for the 8 o'clock round, come please check in about 7:45 for us. That way they can get going, and they will hand you a ballot. It will look something like the ballots on the screen. Every year I say, oh, I'm going to get one of those ballots and make a copy of it. So I actually get a game day ballot. This is kind of a generic one, but it'll more or less look like this. And you're going to pick up your ballot. Please, you're only going to take your ballot. We see quite a bit that Mrs. Johnson comes there to pick up her ballot, and Mr. Johnson is also judging that. So she picks up his ballot. She's like, well, I'll go give it to Mr. Johnson. And what we never find Mr. Johnson again. We actually don't know that he got his ballot because please just take yours. We will get that ballot to Mr. Johnson, right? So take only your ballot. Some of the rounds, some of the middle rounds, we might have the luxury of some paneled rounds where you have multiple judges in a room. We probably won't have that too often. I love it when it happens. But some of the middle rounds, there'll be three judges in there. Most of the time, you're going to be the sole judge in the room, which is okay. That's actually sort of the main way that debate is played with a single judge in the room. And then I will have some of the packets like that you might be reading. There you go. Some of the packets that you might be reading digitally. I'll have some of those at the table there as well. Yeah. And then you get your ballot, you go to your classroom. Everything will be over in the academic wing, the main like L-shaped part of the school, although debates will be up there in that section of the room, section of the school. And try to get there before the round starts. We ask debaters like, hey, can you not go into the room until you got an adult in the room? In reality, debaters just get so used to walking into rando classrooms that it doesn't bother them and they just go in. But the polite debaters might be waiting at the door for you to show up so they can go in the room there. And they'll need a couple of minutes to set up. It takes a minute to arrange the desks and get the computers oriented and all that stuff. So we want to make sure the round starts on time, and you can help us out there by checking in 15 minutes early and getting to your room on there. There's usually a few minutes between check-in and the round starting. If you want to go grab another cookie or freshen up your cup of coffee or something like that, usually that's totally acceptable to do. The round will begin. You are in your room 5 minutes before the round is scheduled to begin. And you will see your two teams of debaters. There'll be four kids in the room. So we might have a few St. James debaters in some of the rooms watching rounds. We ask some of our novices to go and just kind of, back in the day, they used to say scouting. It's not really scouting anymore, but just like go watch some rounds so you can see what other debaters are doing when you're not like having to go face them. So you might have a St. James debater in your room during some of those things. Yeah, you have otherwise you're going to have two teams with two kids on each side. They might need to go sign into their ballot, or they might say, my name is Timmy Johnson and I'm your first affirmative debater. And you can mark it on the ballot. Okay, Timmy Johnson, 1A, first affirmative. And I'm Sally Brookings. I'm your second negative, and whatever. Sometimes the coaches pre-populate those things on the computer. Sometimes they just kind of do it live in the room. But anyway, so they'll enter that stuff in. You confirm which the teams are correct. Okay, yes, your school 7 MK, your team 7 MK. 7 is a school number. MK is the abbreviation of the team on it. We ask at our tournament that we don't put school names on them. It's not like forbidden that you know what the schools are in there, but we try to take down some of the bias on that. And actually, that's kind of self-serving for us at tournaments. I am proud of St. James Academy, and I love the way our kids represent our team. We also know that not everybody likes Catholic schools, so we prefer it when they don't throw that in the face of the judge when they sit down. And so, as a return to the courtesy, we don't put school names on it. We put codes. It's not illegal for them to tell you. I suppose you could even ask if you really wanted to know, but we say that that's one of the things that sort of protects the integrity of the round, that you don't come in like, man, I sure can't stand that Olathe Directional School or whatever. I don't know. That's there. Some kids might try to come up and shake your hand. Yes, I'm Timmy Johnson. I'm your first affirmative. They want to shake your hands with it. You can decide if you want to go touch a teenager or not. I don't know. I usually kind of dap them up because shaking hands with kids is gross. They might ask you for your paradigm. What they're really asking you there is if what your debate experience is, things that you like to see in a round. And it is totally, if you have a paradigm, you could share it with them. If you just say, you know what, I'm just kind of looking to see a good debate today. That's usually kind of enough. You may or may not have a paradigm. Don't get intimidated by that. It's just like debater speak for what are the things you look for in a round. Okay, so the round starts. Round starts. You're going to go and listen to the arguments and take notes as necessary. People that are around debate for a long time kind of learn a method of note taking called flowing, and it becomes real technical. And they work in these columns, and the real good ones working alternating colors, and you're tracking. Okay, this person said this person said this, and how does this relate to this? And they're drawing lines, and it looks like one of those crazy person graphs, right? But take notes as you can. Whatever your note taking style is fine. You don't feel like you have to go and flow everything out real carefully. I would like you to make ballot comments while the round is going on. Um, this is sometimes tricky for people because you do have to sit there and say like, okay, I need to go make notes as I'm going. I have to listen and write at the same time. Please do. There's two reasons. One, they become fresher thoughts for you as you go on. You're not trying to like a round of debates an hour and a half long. So you're trying to like reconstruct the round later. No, just go ahead and put it. My ballots look like stream of consciousness scribbles of a crazy person, and you are welcome to do that. Like make your comments. Please don't wait until the end. There's two reasons why. One, you're not going to remember the round, like all the details of things you wanted to mention until the round is over. But also like people spend a lot of time writing ballots and it kind of slows down our tournament and hey, the show must go on. So what would I like you to do is things I would ask you not to do. Please don't interrupt a round unless there's some kind of an emergency. um, let the debaters go, and they debaters sort of get into a rhythm that they're going, and they interrupting them is hard, but also like that's becomes a judge intervening in things, and you're not a ref. You don't have to call the balls and strikes. You are not expected to know rules. You're just sitting there to adjudicate the round that you've got. So please just don't interrupt around unless there's some kind of an emergency. This times kids are like, can I go to the bathroom? And like they're going to ask you that because you're the grown up in the room and they're just not used to making potty decisions on their own. So they're going to ask you, yes, you can go. It's fine. If there are other judges in the round or out in the hallway, I would ask you not to like confer with them. When you sign the ballot, the other person signed the ballot, and if you want to say like, "Man, can you believe that kid was awesome?" That's fine, but do it after the decision has been made on it. So please don't confer with the other judges in the round. Just let everybody make up their own decision on their own. And I would also ask you not to reveal your decision to the debaters or really to anybody else. So debaters will really want to know how they did after a round. Some of them will kind of like hide it and they'll say, "Thank you for judging. Do you have any feedback?" And what they're trying to do is to size you up if you could like, "Oh yeah, negative team, you clobbered them. Way to go." Right? That's what they're hoping you'll say. Please don't. I would just ask you to say, "Hey, I write a good ballot. You could find it on the ballot, right? Don't give any oral feedback and don't reveal your decision to the debaters." Most coaches, and I do this myself, most coaches do not like to share with debaters on tournament day their own record. Um, like if I've got a team that is going 4-0, I don't want the team to know that. I don't want them to be cocky. I don't want them to be sassy. I want them to just go into the round in front of them knowing that this is the round they need to worry about. Sometimes you get a team going 0-4, and I don't want them to worry about that either. I want somebody to just look at the round ahead of them. And I think most debate coaches kind of like to operate that way. So help us just kind of protect coaching on that, and don't reveal your decision. When the round is over. You have heard all the debaters. They have thank you for judging, and they've walked out of the room on it. Complete your ballot and decide who won. Sometimes it's super obvious. Sometimes, like some teams, just man, they did everything right. The other team did not, right? Like sometimes it is super obvious. I find that most of the time it's actually kind of hard. It's actually kind of hard. You look at it, you're like, both teams did things right, both teams did things wrong. I've got to make a judgment on this one. Yes, you do. You're the judge. One team has to win. I'm also going to tell you your decision is right. The judge is always right. There's no one to appeal it to. Your decision is final. Um, and the kid isn't going to confront you. I can't believe that you voted for the other team over us. Like they're not supposed to do that. I've actually never really had that situation happen, and I don't expect it again. But your decision is final. It's not subject to. If a kid gets all hot and like pissy and wants to come and complain, Wahlberg, I can't believe my round three judge. You'd be like, oh, yeah, it's the way it goes sometimes. Like your judge is fine. Anyway, you make your decision. One team has to win. One team cannot win. And then you have to rank the competitors. Now, I'm going to say now, this is the hardest part of judging. You have to decide which kid is the number one debater in that room, who is the best debater in that round, who is second, who is third, and who is not the best debater in that round. So they're not points, they're rankings. It is one is the best, four is not the best. That is the hardest part. You're going to struggle with it. I I feel your struggle. I don't have another answer for you. Um, we say that the rankings must match the decision, which is to say the winning team has to have the better debaters on it. So you think about it, like the winning team has to, okay, so you're totaling up ranks, one, two, three, or four. The winning team could have a score of three ranks, right? Somebody got the one, somebody got the two, it's a total of three. That's a winning team. Somebody could have a total of four. Somebody got the one, somebody got the three, the other team got the two and the six. It's like the losing team is the worst ranks to it, right? It is possible to have a 5 and 5, 1 and 4, 2 and 3. That happens pretty frequently. Um, if we're going to have trouble at our tournament, I'll just predict it now because this happens all the time. It is going to be a winning decision on worst debaters. And then we'll have to like find you. Mrs. Johnson, can we talk about this ballot real quick? Is this the team you really wanted to win? If so, we need to like fix the rankings on it. When you turn your ballot in, we're going to ask debaters to look over it ahead of time. We're going to try to catch that before it even gets to the score tabulation room. Um, it's not like a crisis if it happens. We just need to get it fixed when it happens. But if we're gonna have problems, that's gonna happen on it. And don't like ramp up your anxiety about it. But the winning team has to have better or equal debaters. And you're going to provide good feedback on your ballot. And you're going to turn in your ballot either to your floor person. There'll be some St. James kids will be wearing I say we, they will be wearing their uniforms. You'll be able to recognize them and you can turn in your ballot to them or really take it back to the judges table where you picked it up from. And they're going to send you off your day. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, good to see you. How was your round? Good. And they look over your ballot. It's like, are you judging round two today? Okay, here's your ballot, Mrs. Johnson. They'll just if you're done, you did your 3 rounds, 1, 2, and 3, and it's round four. And you're not judging anymore. You can go out to glorify the Lord by your life. When you are done with your tournament assignments, you are done. Okay, so what happens in a debate? This debate that you have just seen, people are arguing for. Well, I put the wrong resolution. That's last year's resolution. But there, people are arguing for or against a resolution. Strictly speaking, the judge only votes on this resolution, whether or not you should increase protection of domestic property rights, direct intellectual property rights. If you're a judge and you vote affirmative, yes, you're voting for the team, but what you're really doing is voting for the resolution or against the resolution. If you're a negative, you're voting no. They should not do that, right? So wins and losses are based on how well the team is reaching you. It's their job to reach you. Debate is a communication activity. How well do they communicate their side? How well do they communicate their position to you? Decisions should be made on the round that you just saw. Again, like I said, please don't bring in your preconceived notions of the topic or of the debaters or of debate in general. Let all that aside. I have total faith in your ability to do so. And consider the evidence that you heard, the arguments they made with that evidence, whether or not they were articulated well, whether the delivery was good, whether it was clear what they were doing, their analysis. Uh, Debate is hard, and there's going to be people then, and 3/4 of our tournament is people that are learning how to play the game. And so some debates are going to be kind of murky. There's going to like you read evidence, but I don't really understand what you were doing with it. That's part of learning how to debate, and you're going to see it work out live in front of you. All right, so there are 2 debaters on each side, 2 kids that are affirmative, 2 kids that are negative. The first affirmative is the first person that goes up and speaks in the round. So if I'm looking down at the blue and orange boxes on the bottom of the screen, the 1AC is the first affirmative constructive. And that's where the person introduces the topics of the round. Then there's the cross examinations and the first negative constructive cross examination, second affirmative constructive, second negative, first negative rebuttal, first affirmative rebuttal. Okay. Those are the 4 types of speeches and kind of the order they go in. Constructives are where debaters construct their arguments. Cross examinations, they ask questions of each other. And rebuttals, they begin to answer and sum up various parts of the round. You will hear people say that there are no new arguments in rebuttals. And we say that's generally true in debate, right? Like once you get to the point where you're running out of speeches, you can't ask any more questions, and you're getting harder and harder to answer arguments. Rebuttal should draw down a round, usually, like put it is okay to put new responses on current arguments, um, but we don't want to see like brand new topics introduced in rebuttals on those because just kind of a fair way of balancing your opponents on there. Okay. Each team, besides these timed speeches, 8-minute constructives, 3 minutes cross-examination, 5 minutes rebuttals, also get 8 minutes of unstructured preparation time, prep time, they'll call it. In general, debaters keep track of their own prep time. You are not expected to be a timekeeper. You do not have to do it. There are some corners of the debate world where you are not allowed to be a timekeeper. Nevertheless, you don't need to. Kids should keep track of their own time. They will all sit there with their kitchen timers and beep 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 beep, and they play them on, and they both kids will time each other at the same time in the same moments. That's fine. Judge do not need to keep time. Focus on the ballot. But these preparation times, they might use it in little chunks. Somebody might use 45 seconds of prep time for one speech and 2 minutes of prep time for another speech, and that's part of the deal. Theoretically, the prep time includes the time to go upload their stuff to the internet so their opponents can see it. In practice, that doesn't always get counted as prep time on there. If you are judging a novice round, and most rounds will be novice rounds, they work with what's known as the novice packet, a pre-selected set of topics and evidence that they can use. It's kind of the guardrails that we put on for people learning the game. Open debate. So the advanced debaters do not have these rules. Advanced debaters basically have infinity evidence that they can use, and both teams will have access to, both divisions will have access to the internet, but open debaters sometimes like look up evidence in real time around them. It's really hard to do, but some will try. That said, you are not a referee. You are not expected to police these rules. You are not expected to police the prep times, the speech times. The kids should all do their own self-policing on that. If there is somebody being egregious, like they didn't set a, this happens a lot with novices. They'll get up there, like they're doing their constructives and they forgot to set their 8-minute timer, and like 13 minutes in, they're like, ugh. You could make a note on that on your ballot if you want, but like you are not expected to be a timekeeper. Don't worry about that. You don't have to enforce the rules. How do you pick a winner at the end of the round? You pick a winner fairly. There is no formula. This is really hard for, especially if you're a teacher, have an ed background or something like that, because we really want rubrics. We want to be able to justify our answers. Like, well, I'm sorry, you didn't have that point, so I can't give you the. There isn't one in debate. So just be fair about it. Some people sit down and say, I'm a policy maker, and if I'm going to vote affirmative, then if I'm going to vote affirmative, then I'm going to vote for this policy. Or if I'm going to vote negative, then I don't want this policy. That's considered a real paradigm in debate, and you are welcome to do that. Some people sit down and say communication skills. I'm not a policymaker, and you're high school kids. You don't actually make policy. I just want to know this communication activity. Who talks pretty? Right? That is also a fine paradigm for it. Sometimes people sit down and say, like, you know what? I don't have any idea. Sell me. Teach me what I need to know. I'm going to go with somebody that just sells me the best. There's no formula. And I even find that like within the round, from round to round, the things kind of vary, just kind of what the dictates of the round is. If you hear somebody talk about the rules of debate, there actually aren't that many rules of debate. We were just talking about this. We were just talking about this in class today. It was pretty funny. So in debate, we have speaker orders. The kids have to go one AC, one NC, two AC, two NC. There are time limits. The speech lasts 8 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. In the state of Kansas, we have some rules about how evidence should be cited. And that's about it. That's about all the rest of the rules of debate. Everything else is debatable, which is a dumb thing to say, but it's actually kind of true. And we said this in class, and there was one kid whose like eyes lit up and said, "There's no rules?" Like this was like this clarity moment for this child. There's no rules? I was like, well, not really. What are you thinking about? The kid says, it's like, well, what if we just get up and we don't talk about the topic at all. We just talk about what we want to talk about. I'm thinking like in the affirmative round, they're going to talk about their favorite Pokemon or something like that, right? Technically, the rules will allow it. I don't think you're going to win a lot of rounds. And if I was the judge, I probably am not going to vote for Pokemon Kid. But you're not going to get kicked out of the tournament. I told that cherub that they might get kicked off the bus and have to walk home from the tournament if they do it while I'm the coach. But the rule there's actually not very few rules in debate. There's very few rules in debate. So don't feel like you need to be a ref. Is what I'm kind of getting at. Okay, we are golly, this is you got me monologuing. All right. I want to talk for a second about some debate terminology. Just kind of give you a heads up on some things that you might hear thrown out and around. I know this is a lot. Yeah. It's just some terminology that you might hear and around. And so it's introduced to you maybe a couple of days beforehand. All of the stuff's in the packet. You're welcome to read along with me. I'm also going to say these terms do not always have very consistent definitions, and they are often imprecisely used, particularly among people who are still learning the game. So I'm going to throw these out. These are kind of the way a coach sees it. A 15-year-old learning the game might have some different takes on this. So, but I'll introduce the terms kind of the way coaches think about it. The first word is called prima facie. It's two words, and my Latinist friends tell me that it's actually prima facie, which sounds way more insulting. But debaters say prima facie, and it basically means that an affirmative needs to be at first face, at first look, at prima facie. The affirmative needs to establish all of the stock issues, and I'll explain this in a second. But we abbreviate it as THIS: topicality, harms, inherency, significance. Sometimes Henri debaters rearrange those letters, but basically we say that those are the four stock issues, and that's and on the surface of it, a affirmative needs to go meet these things. We would say that if a topic is unchallenged by the negative, then it's consented to, and the F wins that one by concession. And negative arguments, which are unchallenged by the affirmative, are assumed to be conceded to the negative. So, but at first glance, it needs to work. Another term that you might hear is status quo. I find as an adult, I know this term. As a kid, I did not know this term. But the idea is the current state of affairs. The way that if we did nothing, like right now, you and I live in the status quo. This is it. Congratulations, you made it. And if you never vote affirmative, then the status quo just keeps going. That's the idea of presumption, that if we do nothing, then right now, the future is right now. Like it'll just be this, but later, right? So that's the idea of the status quo. You will probably hear that term a lot in a debate round. That's an important position for the neg to defend the status quo, the affirmative to indict the status quo. There are some other things they could do, but that's usually a typical place for both teams. A term you might also hear is fiat, another Latin term. I was first introduced this term in high school debate, and then immediately learned about it in a religious context. When we say that when Mary, at the moment of the of Jesus' conception, consented to be the mother of our Lord, she gave her fiat. It basically it's a Latin word, is being an affirmative, a let it be, a let's do it, a yes. All of those might be seen as fiat. And then what it basically means is if you as a judge vote affirmative, then boom, it's happening just as the plan is written. This is okay. In policy debate, all of the resolutions include the word should. The United States federal government should do something, right? So fiat is just like the use of that word should. And it means that a neg can't get up there and say you know what? Congress is going to hate this plan, and the judge can vote F all they want, and it's never going to make it out of Congress. While in real life, that's probably, may or may not be true. For the purpose of debate, fiat exists so you can have the rest of the debate. Another term that you might hear is disadvantage. You might hear this abbreviated as disads. That's a fun one to say. They are sometimes abbreviated as DAs, a disad. It's a negative argument. It's an argument of the negative team, usually. It is possible for an F to have a disad, whatever. Usually a negative argument that says a certain problem will happen if you vote F. So you say, every policy has intended and unintended consequences of it. Like that's like in real life, that's actually what happens. A negative usually will throw out a disad there, say, if you vote AF, you think you're going to do good, but this is the really bad thing that's an unintended consequence and will blow up on you. Ideally, a disad has a few parts to it, a link, a break, and an impact, and hopefully the kids are going to work that out for you in the course of the round. These might be generic disads. When I was a kid at a high school, as a high school debater, we used to say that every disad needed to be unique and needed to be about the case they are running in front of you. Now we see a lot of generic. It's the kids find a disad or two they like and they run it in every round that they're in. That's fine. Sorry, you're kind of getting some debate inside baseball on there. But that's if you hear disad, that's what they mean. Nope, going back. Counter plans. A counter plan is a negative argument that says the affirmative is proposing a policy. The negative would also like to propose a policy. In counter to your plan, we have a counter plan. We were just talking about this in class today. Now you say, Wahlberg, I thought that the affirmative should affirm the resolution and the negative should negate the resolution. And you are right. A counterplan is a non-resolutional way to reach some goal. So, kind of a classic case on this one, we say that the resolution says that the United States federal government should strengthen domestic and intellectual property rights. What if the United Nations would strengthen domestic and intellectual property or strengthen world intellectual property rights? Maybe they end up kind of doing what the affirmative team is doing better than the AF would in a non-resolutional way. That's a counterplan. It is very likely you will see counterplans in open division if you're judging advanced debaters. It is less likely, but definitely possible you will see it in novice rounds. It's kind of the time of the season where coaches start empowering their novices to run counterplans. It's actually the thing we talked about in class this very day. The last thing I want to throw out there is the word critique, which is spelled with a K, which I know is not the way we spell the word critique in English. And this is fun. A critique is a debate argument which entered college debate first and then into high school debate through German philosophy. So they use the German spelling on it. But a critique is some kind of argument which is not about policy or about policy debate, but it's some kind of social criticism or philosophical criticism that is parallel to debate. So, do you remember a couple of years ago when there was a lot of people really worried about critical race theory? Critical race theory, I first learned about as a debater in the 90s as a K argument, as a critical argument in a debate round, saying that there are certain things which debate reinforces or undercuts, and that a judge should not reinforce racial theory, something like that. That's an idea of a critique. What we see a lot, and you are very likely to encounter this kind of argument, is what's known as the capitalism critique, that says that while capitalism has made overall a lot of money for a lot of people, it also unfairly exploits certain people. And that if you are going to, this is usually a negative position, and if you are going to strengthen intellectual property rights, what you're actually doing is helping rich companies get richer at the expense of everyone else in society. And all of the stuff that gets bad about economics is going to get exaggerated. And so reject toxic capitalism and vote neg. Now, there's a lot of context there. And a lot of people will have like a visceral reaction on any side of that argument. This is what we talk about, that a good judge will kind of like de-escalate their emotions on something and say, this argument is presented. Is there a logical procession to this argument? Is this a bunch of malarkey? Is this like something that, whether or not you believe or hate the argument, I want you to like step aside on that one. You are very likely to see critiques in the open division. it's less likely, but certainly possible that this will show up in the novice division. At St. James Academy, I don't super encourage this style of debate because I think it is unfair to the judge. I think the judge who has some opinion, that it's tricky for a judge. I don't encourage this style of debate because I think it puts people in an unfair position. But I will also say that this exists. You are likely to hear it. What I want you to do is just decide if the argument as presented has merit or not. Be fair on that one, no matter what your position is on it. I certainly have positions, but I try to be a fair judge when I'm around too. The last bit of jargon I want to throw out for you is what we think of as the stock issues: topicality, harms, inherency, solvency. Topicality is the idea that the affirmative has to affirm that resolution. And if they are not affirming that resolution, then you can't vote affirmative. If they're using any of the words wrong, if they are missing any of the words, if you're trying to strengthen domestic intellectual property, but what you're actually doing is weakening domestic intellect, and an egg might say this, they would say then they are non-topical and you can't vote F. So that's the question of topicality. Does the affirmative plan stick to the resolution? Harms are the idea of how bad is the current situation? Does the status quo need a change? And if so, will it cause other problems? Will there be other disadvantageous things that happen out of it? You're going to ruin the world one way or the other. To kind of exaggerate on it, but that's the idea of harms. Inherency is the idea. You're not likely to hear an inherency argument this year, but maybe it's what's currently being done? Is Congress currently working on this issue? Did Congress just pass your exact plan yesterday? What's the inherent situation like? And then solvency, maybe you say, you know what? The harms are status quo does have some problems. We should have fixed them. This plan won't do it. Or the affirmative says, there's harms out there. Here's the way to fix it, right? These are kind of the stock issues. This is not a finite list. When I debated, we learned 5 stock issues. We split harms into 2 other kinds. Sometimes I talk to my other debate coach friends. I did this Zoom call with the Aquinas coach last year, and he pops in. He says, "You have 4 stock issues? I had 7 that I teach," and he teaches 7 stocks. So this is kind of debate theory. What it really means is this is how policies are made in real life. When Congress is debating stuff, they're debating the bill in front of them. Sometimes they're debating something that isn't in the bill. Do you need to do something? Is something worse going to happen? Who else is working on it? And is it going to fix the problem? There's nothing magic about the stock issues. These are just how policies are made. But these terms become sort of the cornerstones of debate. On the page 5 of your packet, I've mentioned this a little bit, but kind of your balloting specifics. Pick a winning team. I was just listening to a podcast this morning. I guess they're changing the Mega Millions lottery. I don't know. I'm not a lottery player, but they're changing the Mega Millions on how many, how expensive it is to buy a ticket, and they're taking a ball out of the thing. So you have to pick fewer whatevers. But the person that was the rep from the lotteries is oh yes, but for a person having a non-winning experience, and the podcast host says, you mean they lost the lottery? He says, no, a non-winning experience. Anyway, some debaters are going to win your round, and some debaters go to have a non-winning experience. Rank them. That's hard. I know. Do it. Match the decision on it. Provide your good feedback. Do that while the round is going on. Turn in the ballot. And if you're debating or if you're judging the next round, let's get you a new one. I do want to kind of close with this idea that some feedback is good and some is not. Helpful feedback on your ballot. If things are well organized, if you you talk about debaters, oh yes, your logic is pretty good. I was able to follow your arguments all the way through. That disad about court clogs, that makes a lot of sense to me. I got it, or I understood your answer. Your answer to the court clog DA was brilliant. Or you'll see things about presentation. Hey, good eye contact. Or a little hard to hear you in the back of the room. Need you to speak up. Or you spent the whole time reading to your notes and I didn't get any, I never got any eye contact on it. Something like that. Clarity, pace. Kid, you're talking too fast. I'm not a debater. I can't hear that. So that's good, helpful feedback. Okay, little caution feedback. This is our yellow stoplight here. I As a coach, as a teacher, I often aspire to be the realest person in the room, to like go out and be as honest as I can about the situation that I'm seeing on there. I have to roll that back on the ballot sometimes because what I'm trying to be as like clarity, this matters, makes me sound kind of like a poop head. So I guess I got to roll it back and make sure I'm not sounding as aggressive. In my head, I'm not aggressive at all. I'm being clear and getting to the point. But I have to go through and like, okay, how do I soften this sentence? Um, I also don't, I would prefer if you did not mention anything about a kid's like timbre of voice, pitch of voice. And I'll say this that like girls often get feedback like, you were just a little too squeaky, or I didn't, or it's like, oh, you have such a pretty voice. Yeah, honestly, it's always the girls that get those comments about their voice, and I just don't know if it's that helpful. Uh, I'll also say that jokes, I think of myself as a funny person. I love jokes. Jokes do not work in debate. They just, as a judge, it's just that I don't know. I don't know if it's the intensity of it or something like that. Jokes on a ballot don't work. I'm going to tell you that when you're a 15-year-old kid reading a ballot, um, the feedback is always going to seem very personal. And as a coach, I try to de-escalate that when it happens, even if it's not intended to be. Just make sure we're being our best Christian selves on there. A couple things I wish you would not put on a ballot. Anything about a kid's appearance, anything compliment or not compliment. Um, I like your tie is just too much risk of being misconstrued. Um, Sweetie, I think your dress is too short. Please just don't mention that. Please just leave it off the ballot. Any kind of construct, like even the best intentions aren't going to go well. At St. James Academy, we have a dress code that we expect our debaters to go compete in. You will see other schools that seem to have an anti-dress code. Um, just don't mention it on the ballot. If there's something that's problematic, and you feel like actually an adult needs to say something, you come tell me and I will address it with their coach and let their coach deal with it. Please don't put it on the ballot. Any comments outside of students' control? Um, when it gets down to it, they're high school kids, and they only have they have certain amounts of agency and effectiveness in the world, and some things they just can't control, and something that's outside of their control. Um, I had a very good meaning judge. Wanted to tell this kid, hey, I can hear you have a stutter, and I think it's really awesome how you try to manage this in a communication activity. Kid doesn't, I mean, kid knows he has a stutter, and that's going to be read as like some like highlighting a disability or something like that. Or yeah, argument, but that a kid didn't make. Like, boy, you should have said so and so. Not a helpful comment. Judge the round that you saw, not the one that you wish you saw. So anything on there. That said, I don't really expect any problematic ballots, but I think we've got a good group of people. I don't usually have a problem with ballots. Um, our judges are their best selves, and they respect kids trying to do a hard thing. And I want to go back to this. This is where we'll close on this one. Relax. You're probably going to do fine. Debaters learn to recognize their judges. Our tournament, it says novice and JV. We're actually a novice and open tournament. But these are like, high school kids. They're learning the game. This isn't a courtroom. They're learning a complicated game. A good debate judge is fair-minded and honest. Keep going back to that. Like what I think about the topic doesn't really matter. What the debaters presented on, that's the round I'm judging. Just kind of go back to that. And remember, they're there to reach you. You are the audience, and you don't need to know everything. It's communication activity. They're there to come find you. Uh, and with that, that's what I got. Oh, look at this, baby. We are just under an hour. This is awesome. Okay.